taking on the lefty and Brett Anderson. Suarez crushes left-handed pitching, and I think he's in a tremendous spot to go deep here.
2 double plays tonight. Here's a drive to center field. Did he? Did he? He did! Suarez!
Hello everyone and welcome to the channel. I'm back to break down this 10-game slate on DraftKings and FanDuel. If you tuned in yesterday, we did pretty well overall. I had mentioned throwing in some Reds righties and mainly Eugenio Suarez, and he ended up going deep, which bumps me up to a 5 for 9 on my home run call. So we're back to over 50% right on those. And then I had mentioned pitching some Alec Mills against the Detroit Tigers, and he was actually really low owned on DraftKings, and he went out there and put up a big numbers. He put up a big number in the, he put up a 22 spot, which is very good for his salary. He was up there with some of the top pitchers on the slate, and he was cheaper. And then we had some bad calls in that same game. I had mentioned, I had a lot of interest in playing both him and Mize. Casey Mize, the top prospect for the Tigers, and Mize went out there and, he looked raw again. He's a talented kid the first time out. He looked really good with his stuff, but a little wild, and kind of the same case, and he got himself in trouble. So, some good and some bad. Overall, I think I was pretty happy with it, and we're going to move on to today's slate. Before we get into it, I have released some Patreon packages over there on Patreon. I have my MLB DFS package, and then I actually have an MLB betting package, which I haven't really mentioned much on the channel. But I'm 8-0 on my last calls on my betting package, and it's an exclusive sports betting package where I break down my top picks of the day for sports betting. And I use all this similar color-coded data that I use for DFS, and I give you some reasoning as to which teams you should bet on and which lines, and that type of thing to put you in a spot for success to win some bets if you're a sports bettor. So if you're interested in that, go ahead and check those packages out. Link in the description. You can follow me over on Twitter at KJK_DFS. And with that being said, enough of the promo stuff. Let's start breaking down this slate today. So as always, the first thing I like to do when breaking down the slate is to go ahead and look at some pitchers we're going to want to play in our lineups today, and we do that by looking at K rate. It's fantasy sports. We get points for strikeouts, and the first guy that stands out today is that in Garrett Cole. Cole's a no-name around the league, absolute elite pitcher. He's got good stuff. He gets himself in trouble with the ground ball and the fly ball rate sometimes, but it's Garrett Cole. We don't care. He's an elite pitcher. He's got 36.8% K rate and a 32.4 against righties. But then against lefties, he's got a 41.3%. So he's really good against righties and all the hard contact and all that stuff, and then the lefties, it's a little worse. But the strikeout rate actually ticks up to 41.3 against lefties. So, I mean, at the end of the day, it's Garrett Cole. We're always going to have interest in playing him, and it's just a matter if we can fit the price tag in our lineups. And today he comes in at a price tag at 10.6 on DraftKings, which I think is very very affordable for Garrett Cole. I mean, it's not too much. And then he gets to take on the Atlanta Braves, which isn't the best matchup in the world, but they do have their fair share of strikeouts throughout the middle of this order, and some of the guys with the power, and Cole can definitely ring up some strikeouts here in this matchup. So, most obvious play on the board, gotta like Garrett Cole. And then moving further along, second guy is going to be, arguably the best pitcher this year, Shane Bieber. He's just been absolutely elite, taking on the Minnesota Twins, so not the best matchup, but Bieber's numbers, he has a 29.6% K rate, 29.1% against righties, and then 30.1 against lefties. And he's just solid across the board. It's Shane Bieber. He's our second premier option. And when looking at the matchup in the Vegas lines, he's a 177 favorite today. And he's 10.8 on DraftKings. So, compared to Garrett Cole, you're paying an extra $200. So something to keep in mind there. I don't know if you're going to be able to play both of these guys in a lineup today. If you can, that might be ideal as far as, having some dominant pitching. We'll have to break down the bats and figure out if there's any cheap bats we like later on in the video. But Shane Bieber, definitely the second guy to note on the slate. Absolutely elite pitcher. And, it doesn't really matter the matchup that both himself and Cole are in. They're going to go out there and get their strikeouts. And then, the Twins, as I mentioned, aren't the best. But the same type of deal as I had mentioned in the Braves lineup. The middle of the order, they have some guys with the power and some strikeouts. So that's where Bieber can get his upside and get those fantasy points for you. Third guy I'm going to want to mention is that in Brandon Woodruff. Woodruff has a 28.1% K rate, and he's really solid across the board. If you look at the sheet, you see, he's pretty much all green, and yellow, so even his weaknesses aren't that bad. Against righties, he's absolutely dominant. He has a 27.7% strikeout rate, and then against lefties, he has a 28.4% strikeout rate. And he's taking on the Cincinnati Reds today, who is a team that definitely has some strikeouts in their lineup, once again, in the middle of the order with these guys with power. So, Eugenio Suarez, Jesse Winker, Mike Moustakas, all guys that can absolutely slug, but they also have their strikeouts. So when looking at Woodruff's numbers and, seeing that how solid he is all the way across against righties and lefties, it makes you think, he can definitely go out there and get the job done. And he comes in at 8.2K on DraftKings. So he's in the mid-price range, and he's a good option to pay for if you need to go down a little bit in price from a Bieber or a Cole, as we had discussed previously. Next guy to talk about is going to be that in Chris Paddock. Chris Paddock has the best matchup probably out of anyone that we've mentioned so far by quite a bit. He gets to take on the Seattle Mariners, which isn't a very threatening lineup. He has a 25.9% K rate, 29.8 against righties, and a 22.3 against lefties. So he's a guy that we do prefer to target in right-handed heavy matchups if at all possible. And when looking at the lineup that the Mariners are going to roll out today, they do have their fair share of lefties in there, but they're all lefties that aren't really too threatening outside of Kyle Seager. None of these guys in this lineup we look at and we're real scared of. And then the righties are just going to add to the bonus of the matchup as far as, Paddock's strikeout rates against righties. And overall, up and down, Seattle's just a lineup that we're going to want to target consistently. They're not a scary lineup. Paddock's a kid with a lot of talent, and then if you look at the price on DraftKings, he comes in at 7.8K. So he's a little bit even cheaper than the other guys we discussed. Another option to think about putting in your lineups today. And then not to mention he comes in as a 194 favorite, so Vegas likes him a lot, which makes me like him even more. And lastly, talking about Vegas favorites, if you look over at Adam Wainwright's coming in as a 213 favorite. Big favorite today, and he's 8-4 on DraftKings, and he gets the matchup in the Kansas City Royals. So got to mention Wainwright. He's in a good spot today. And when looking at his numbers, you can see, he's got a 20.6% K rate, so it's nothing crazy at all, below average as far as fantasy sports are concerned, but the ground ball and the fly ball rate are tremendous. And then the splits against righties are very good. He's got a 22.5% strikeout rate over there. And then against lefties, he's got an 18.5. So, Wainwright's a sinker baller. He's more of a real-life pitcher, meaning he doesn't have the high strikeout stuff that we usually target in a fantasy pitcher. But taking on the Royals lineup with a high strikeout rate and his control, and he's a high favorite. His strikeouts can be ticked up from the matchup, and then you're really confident in him going out there and just pitching an overall game. A veteran pitcher who just has control, keeps the ball on the ground, as I mentioned, and can go deep into this game and then get his strikeouts have a little more strikeouts than he typically would because of the matchup. And then lastly, we have to mention, once again, another matchup thing and another Vegas thing, Julio Urias. He's 9.5 on DraftKings, and he's a minus 200 favorite. Big favorite here, taking on San Francisco. And he comes in at a 9.5 price tag. I'm looking at his stats over here. You can see he's got a 25.4% K rate. He's a little bit below average across the board. A lot of orange going on there. And then against righties, he's got a 24.2% strikeout rate. And against lefties, it's a 27.7% strikeout rate. So he's just, I don't even, it's just solid. It really is more about the matchup, too. I mean, the 25.4% strikeout rate isn't the greatest, but these San Francisco Giants can definitely supply some strikeouts. And then you look at the fact that he's a minus 200 favorite. It never hurts us to target some heavy favorited pitchers because we get credit for the wins if they're able to go 5 innings and pitch a solid game, get some strikeouts for us. Obviously, we'd prefer for them to go more than 5 innings, but that's the minimum for the win. And if he can go out there and get 8 or 9 strikeouts type of deal through 5, or even pitch 8 innings and then get 6 strikeouts and then he gets the win, this is all good stuff for us, and it makes us want to target him in our lineups. So enough of the pitching. We have to move on to bats and figure out some of these bats we're going to like today. And when looking at pitchers we're going to target, the very first spot that stands out to me is that in Steven Brault. Brault has to go into Chicago and take on the Chicago White Sox, and the Chicago White Sox have a lineup that is designed very well to take on left-handed pitching. And then you look at his WOBA, his hard hit rate, and his slugging against righties. It's not good. A lot of red, a lot of dark orange. I think against lefties, he's very good. So we do prefer right-handed hitters against him. And, you know, when looking at the Chicago White Sox, they definitely have some right-handed bats that match lefties. So that's when things get interesting. And when, you know, figuring out the guys exactly, we have Jose Abreu, Eloy Jimenez, Edwin Encarnacion, Luis Robert, James Mccann. Danny Mendick is too cheap. Not really like a high power upside guy, but it's just too cheap. And then Adam Engel, same type of deal. You can just throw them in to finish off your stacks for some salary relief. But, you know, the premier options are, and I didn't even mention Tim Anderson. Tim Anderson at the top of the lineup is a big-time good option. Crushes lefties, and he's been hot. And then you look at the team total that the White Sox have. They have a 5.6 implied total. So Vegas is 110% backing us up on this. So Anderson, Jose Abreu, Eloy Jimenez, Edwin Encarnacion, Luis Robert, and James Mccann are my favorite options. Yoan Moncada is a guy who you can definitely throw in, but he does usually excel a little better against right-handed pitching. Just a little bit of a disclaimer there, but to be honest with you, in this matchup, I'm comfortable with throwing Moncada in my stacks 100%. And the toughest part is that Jose Abreu and Edwin Encarnacion are both first basemen. So you're going to have to decide between them. I mean, it is kind of a salary thing. Jose Abreu is higher in the lineup, so if you can afford the 5K price tag, go ahead and throw him in. But Edwin Encarnacion is also a great option. And I really like James Mccann in the catcher spot. He crushes left-handed pitching, and catcher is usually a position it's hard to find someone you really like. And McCann is a guy I always like to play when he's taking on the lefties. So, like me some White Sox today. And then moving further along, the next spot we have to target is that in Spencer Turnbull. So we're targeting the Chicago Cubbies. And we're looking at the Cubbies line. It's not out yet, but they get to go into Detroit and they're taking on Spencer Turnbull and this Detroit Tigers bullpen. And Turnbull's been pretty good. So take that for whatever you want. But to me, personally, I think I'm still comfortable with targeting him. And I would want to target him with, you know, the central part of this order. So you got Wilson Contreras, Kyle Schwarber, Javi Baez, Anthony Rizzo, and then Ian Happ. The 1 through 5 there I really like. But at the same time, the bottom of the order for the Cubbies is pretty respectable, and they're very cheap. 2-4, 2-6, 2-9, and 2-6 on DraftKings. I don't hate the fact of just throwing in a bottom of the order stack. I think it could be contrarian, and it might be able to allow you to pay up for some of those elite pitchers that we talked about early on when breaking down the slate. So, you know, we do prefer, the top premier options and guys like Anthony Rizzo and Javi Baez and Kyle Schwarber, obviously. But there's price tags with those guys, and then you go down to the bottom order, they're still respectable hitters, and they're a lot cheaper. So, you know, you can have a lot of interest in up and down this lineup. Depending upon the pitching options you're going with, will probably determine which of those bats you'll be throwing in your lineups. Moving further along, next guy we're going to want to target is that Matt Harvey. Harvey, looking at his numbers across the board, a lot of red and orange going on, not great. And then you look at the splits, he has a 463 slugging against righties, and against lefties, it's really bad. 512 slugging, 45.8% hard contact rate, and a 358 WOBA. Not good against righties, and really not good against lefties. So that's going to make us like the St. Louis Cardinals today. And when looking at the Cardinals lineup, they have just a tremendous lineup for matching up with Harvey up and down. I don't think there's a single guy in this lineup I wouldn't play. And I mean that. And then you mentioned the fact that the Kansas City Royals bullpen is not good, and that makes me like the Cardinals even more. So Harvey's going to get the ball to start the game, and then my thought is, the Cardinals can get him out of this game pretty quickly. And then once they get him out of this game, they're going to get to target a very bad bullpen. So, yeah, I like some Cardinals today. And, I'm just going to go ahead and promote them as a team, and you can honestly just pick your pitching options and then throw in guys salary-wise. So if you want to spend up for 2 elite pitchers, I like the guys in the bottom of the lineup with cheaper price tags. And then if you're going more in the mid-range and stuff, we do prefer the guys in the middle of the order, as always, of course. So, my favorite options would probably be 2 through 5. Tommy Edman, Paul Goldschmidt, Matt Carpenter, and Paul DeJong. That's my premier stack, my top option. And then Colton Wong at the top of the order, you have to throw in as well because he's cheap and he's a second baseman at the top of the order, and second base can be hard to fill in sometimes. So yeah, I really do think you can throw in the pitching that you really like, and then figure out which guys in this order fit in around that. Once again, the bottom of the order, they're cheaper, and it could be contrarian to just go ahead and stack up the bottom of the order, throw in some elite pitching, similar to the Cubs I had mentioned. Get exposure to a team with a high implied run total, and get exposure to some great pitching. So, yeah, just stuff to think about. And then I think that pretty much sums it up. I mean, just great spot overall. It's tough. I want to be specific and help you guys out and give you specific plays. But when I really like a team up and down, I'm going to tell you I do, and this is another spot that I really do. And then moving over to the next spot we're going to target, the San Diego Padres in this next game get to take on the lefty and Marco Gonzalez. And when looking at Marco's numbers, less than stellar across the board. Against righties, he's got a 407 slugging and a 303 WOBA. And then against lefties, he's not that great either. But really the appeal is the Padres have just been absolutely hot, and they have some guys that really crush left-handed pitching. Fernando Tatis and Manny Machado are premier options. Those guys are just unreal against left-handed pitching. And then you have Ty France, Will Myers, and Austin Hedges is actually in a great spot too. I had mentioned, not always liking catchers. I had mentioned James Mccann earlier, and then Austin Hedges is similar. Take it on the lefty. I like him a lot compared to catchers I usually like. So throw him in, and then you got Jurickson Profar as a second base outfield option. So yeah, like Fernando Tatis and Manny Machado a lot, Will Myers a lot, Ty France a lot. Pretty much all these righties I like a lot. And then we mentioned Marco's not great against lefties, so you can throw in the lefty to be contrarian and complete your stack. So throw in like a Cronenworth at the bottom of the order at 3-5 for some salary relief and a lot of power. Cronenworth has a lot of power, and he can definitely still get the job done, lefty. And then the last option I'm going to go over today is going to be that in the New York Yankees. Vegas doesn't have a lineup for the Yankees yet, but I do think they're going to be in a great spot. Atlanta doesn't have the best bullpen, and they're taking on Ian Anderson. So Ian Anderson is a kid that we don't have any data on yet because he hasn't actually taken the bump in the majors. So we can't analyze him from that aspect, but we can analyze him from the fact that he's taking on the New York Yankees, and they're a lineup that's just scary. Even though it's kind of their B team, they're still really threatening. And a kid that doesn't have a lot of experience taking on them for the first time, it's probably going to be a good spot to target. You know what I mean? So we will have to keep an eye on the Vegas lines. We will have to make sure that Vegas is backing us up as far as gauging how good of a spot it is, because I do think that's going to be helpful in a spot where we don't have any data on Ian Anderson. But just have to mention the Yankees. Aaron Hicks, Luke Voigt, Mike Tauchman at the top, Gio Urshela, Gary Sanchez, Brett Gardner. Once again, a lineup where you can target the premier bats at the top, but you also have some salary relief at the bottom of the order with respectable options to fill in your lineups. So we'll keep an eye on those Vegas lines, see how that's going. And then we will have to factor in that Garrett Cole's taking the bump. So if it's not really a high total and it's just a heavy favorite strictly because pitching, that's going to limit the appeal. Something to keep an eye on. Any of my patrons, keep an eye on the Discord chat, and I will update you on that later in the day. So yeah, that's my breakdown of today's slate. Quick little brief overview. I like Garrett Cole as a pitching option. I like Shane Bieber as a pitching option. The Yankees, I think, is going to be an interesting stack. We have to wait on the Vegas data. I like Brandon Woodruff as a pitcher. I like the Chicago White Sox righties a lot. I like St. Louis a lot as a stack. The Padres I like a lot. mainly the right-handed hitters that mash. And then Julio Urias has a pitching option taking on the San Francisco Giants I like a lot. So that is all from me today. Appreciate you guys tuning in. If you could please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and then leave a comment of your favorite pick to hit a home run today. That would greatly help me with the YouTube algorithm, and I want to hear your guys' picks. And then lastly, I do have to make my own home run call of the day because I haven't made it yet. And, we got back on track yesterday with a good call, as I mentioned. So we're 5 for 9. We're above the 500 mark again. And my home run call of today is going to be that in Jose Abreu of the Chicago White Sox. I had mentioned I really like these White Sox righties taking on Steven Brault. And I think Jose Abreu is in a great spot to hit a home run today. So he is my home run call of the day. Get some Jose Abreu in your lineups. And get some Chicago White Sox righties in your lineups. And that's what I will sign off with. Go ahead and leave a like, subscribe to the channel. Appreciate you guys tuning in today. I wish you all the best of luck tonight, and have a good one.